Yeah, I don't want to go into politics. I never wanted to go into politics, but I wanted to go into public service, and I enjoyed public service, and I would do it all over again. I mean, it was really something special, and it's something, you know, if I never got back involved in government, it's something I would just cherish for the rest of my life.
Hey, what's going on, Sarasota? My name is Brad Hannon.
Trey Martell.
Felipe Colon.
And we've got a great guest today with us. We've got former mayor, ex-collegiate tennis player, and all kinds of other things that you're going to tell us about. Hagen Brody, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Happy to be here. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I know when I met you, we were downtown, you know, having some drinks, had the kiddos. We had having a good old time. But I understand that a lot of downtown, as you were, you know, mayor, you made some strides. So we want to jump right into the fun stuff. But Felipe's our political expert, so I'll let him get us started.
I don't know if I'd use the word expert with politics,
anything,
but you know, one of the reasons, you know, we've had two former mayors on before, one current mayor, but Hagen's a former mayor I've been excited to have on because I know a lot of the policy is near and dear to his heart. And a lot of what the other mayors accomplished were things that they worked with Hagen on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm sure you'll have kind of some of the same ideas, but just show us a different side of how things are getting done in the city these days.
Sure. Yeah, well, thanks for having me again. You know, just a little bit about me for your viewers that don't know who I am. I grew up here in Sarasota. Graduate of Sarasota High School, class of 2000.
That's right. Me and Trey.
That's right.
I was a freshman when you were a senior there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I remembered that you were there. I didn't know. I couldn't remember. I was actually thinking about on the way over here what year you were. But
I was 03. So
I remember we crossed paths at more than one party.
And then I was 08. I was 08.
And
so you got the grays.
Yeah.
Came back after school and just started to get involved. I was a prosecutor here at the state attorney's office for several years before getting into politics, and then ran for city commission.
Cool. Let's jump right into it. What are some of the things that you're most proud of that you accomplished while you were mayor?
You know, it was the craziest part about my term in office. I was there for 5.5 years. And that's kind of unique because it's usually a 4-year term, but one of the things we were able to accomplish was changing the date of the city elections to move them on what they call on-cycle elections, so that you have more participation. When I first ran, they were holding the elections in they call it off-cycle, which is the way a lot of municipalities do it, but I never felt that was the best way and the most inclusive way.
What is the cycle that you're speaking of?
So they were being held in the spring, in March and May, and obviously it's not an election season. It's not an election. Nobody really knew that there was an election taking place, to tell you the truth, and we would have very low turnout in the city.
So
elections.
on cycle pairs you up with like the federal election.
Exactly. So everybody's already coming out.
Yeah.
You know, you get 70-80% turnout on cycle. We were getting 15-20% at best in city elections.
Wow.
And the demographics just weren't representative of the community. You didn't get young people coming out. You don't get people of different, you know, races, ethnicities. It's predominantly seniors that follow city politics, follow city government, and I wanted.
So John Cologne's the only person at the poll.
So I'm really glad that you brought this one up because this was a major peeve of mine for a long time before you guys changed this.
Off-cycle elections.
Oh yeah.
Now let me ask you. Let me cut in real quick. So common sense tells you, right? Everything that you said makes perfect sense. That you want to have the masses represented. So you should be on cycle with the other elections. What's the counter argument?
People would say, "Oh, well, you only want people coming out that know. You know, you only want people coming out that
informed voters,
that follow the city politics, etc." But I never felt that was the.
Now I'm torn.
You know, the real reason.
Informed. I'll say this, and Hagen probably won't, but informed voters is also a nice way of saying people who have vested interest in the outcomes of these elections.
Yeah.
Don't we all?
I think that's fair to say. Well, do you work for the city or the county?
I do not.
All right.
No, we all have a vested interest in the
Of course we
outcome
do,
of the
but-
election. What was important about that, and I'm not saying this is like my biggest, this was a huge effort.
This is just why your term was
This was a
longer.
huge effort by a lot of people, first of all, and I was part of it, a small part of it, but I thought it was important because I felt that not necessarily it was, what in my mind, it would force the commission and the city to be reactive and responsible to a broad electorate as opposed to a small electorate, because the reality is politicians, they are held accountable by their voters, and if your voting pool is small or it's very specific, then all of your decisions are going to be geared towards that group. And so I felt that broadening the electorate would broaden our responsibility to different demographics in this city, and it would be reflected in our decisions. So I joined a huge group of people. There were a lot of community leaders that got together and said, this is the time, we got to change this date. It's just too much. So when I think about what we were able to accomplish those years on the commission, I really separate them into three categories. One is kind of inside baseball stuff. A lot of it was structural, stuff like that.
Right.
Changing the city elections date. You wouldn't think that's not a sexy topic. It's not a, it's
like
not
it's
a
a good
headline
change,
grabber,
though.
but it makes a big difference. Some of the changes that we made at City Hall when I was there, changing city management. We had a new police chief. We had a new city manager.
We just had Chief Trochet on the other day.
Oh, he's excellent, and yeah, that started. We had Chief DePino when I was there, and we just, a lot of departments needed a change and a fresh start. And
He actually echoed that same thing. We talked about whether you hire somebody from outside or promote from within, and he said that at that time the police force needed kind of a change agent, and that was DePino.
So I separated into inside baseball, stuff like that, structural changes at City Hall that I think were long overdue. Some of the more fun stuff, the parks and some of the transportation improvements that we were able to make. And then the third undeniable category is COVID. I mean, that was a totally unpredictable, random wild card.
I think that's something that separates you from the other two mayors that we've had on, is that experience. So I think we kind of start there. I mean, that was right in the beginning of it, right through the middle of it. So
nobody had a playbook for it.
Yeah, right.
What were your thoughts when it first developed, and then how did your thoughts develop going forward?
Man, first of all, no matter what you think about COVID now, and I know it's all gotten very political, in those early weeks and months, it was scary.
Yeah.
When I was first took the gavel, if I remember correctly, we were still watching the European numbers going crazy, and we were still watching the European hospitals fill up and overflow. And where kind of everybody was just waiting for what was going to happen when it came stateside. And eventually it did, and it was just a scary, scary time.
Yeah.
We didn't have, PPE. The hospitals were overwhelmed. We didn't remember the ventilators were in huge demand. I mean, I remember vividly having a conversation with our health department director about what we were going to do in the very possible event that Sarasota Memorial ran out of hospital beds for people. We were talking about having hospital beds.
I mean, it was close, wasn't it?
Very close.
Yeah.
And we were talking about expanding into the parking garage. I mean, it was that real, and that just kind of, it was a lot of sleepless nights in those early weeks of COVID here, and it was just a scary time. We have an older community, older demographic, and nobody really knew exactly how it was going to unfold here.
So what was some of the biggest challenges? I mean, like, were things at a standstill for the most part because you couldn't meet, or was these meetings still happening via Zoom? I'm talking like right away when it was lockdown time. Like, was it still all systems go for you? Yeah,
I mean, it was. Your city government cannot stop.
Yeah.
I mean, city government provides essential services. We talk about essential workers.
Right.
These are essential services. This is water. This is sanitation. This is law enforcement. This is 911 responding. So we had to continue operating. We did what we could to be safe, and we were like everybody else, trying to figure out how dangerous this thing was going to be, how deadly it was going to get. So yeah, I mean that was a pretty challenging event for us.
Was it so? Obviously it calls for a whole lot more demand. So was it around the clock for you in that very beginning, times, or what?
Yeah.
I mean, I know sleepless nights due to like the thoughts and stress and stuff.
No, every day you're checking the numbers. You're looking at local numbers. We were getting data. We had great citizens that were compiling data and putting together models for us, letting us know how and you're just watching that trend line and the peaks and the valleys. Remember, you'd have those surges, and you're just thinking to yourself, okay, this surge is creeping up, it's creeping up. At a certain point, it's because all of those other numbers rose with the surges. Mm-hmm. Hospital beds, hospital stays, deaths. I mean, all of that followed those trends in those early days, and you just never knew how high this surge was going to go.
Right.
With every new variant, every new peak. And
obviously, we couldn't control the virus. So, like, what? You described all the essential services, the things that we don't notice necessarily until they're screwed up, right? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Nobody's looking at their trash collection and all that stuff every day. But what could you guys actually do? Just position resources differently, partner with federal infrastructure? Like, what was the, let's say you did see a spike and you saw it was about to get really out of hand here as opposed to, other places. Like, what can you even do? Like, that just seems like such a tough scenario.
You did what you could. You knew where we were in need of resources. Right. So if it was the hospital and the nurses were running out of PPE, you did what you could as an elected to get on the phone and use your position as best you could to try to figure out who else had PPE or when it was coming in from other states and trying to steer it over to your community. And no doubt every other person, in charge across the state and country were doing the same thing. But whether it was masks in the beginning, for a lot of it was for our medical personnel.
Keeping them going.
Yeah, I mean, they were running low on PPE. They were running low on masks. So a lot of it was that. And then you got into the vaccine distribution. And in the beginning, I don't know if you remember, but we had that list. Remember the list of like 100, 200,000
Who gets it
people?
first?
Yeah, where they were trying to figure out the fairest way to distribute the vaccine as it came out and to the people that needed it most. And it was mostly seniors, of course, that and just fragile people with compromised immune systems that were desperate and really terrified. I mean, I remember, when people talk about COVID now, it's so hard to separate the politics that have been
big time
lumped in with that, but it's still for me so real and just down to earth. In this community dealing with it, there was no time for politics. There was no desire for politics because we just didn't have that luxury. Right. Politicians at higher levels, they could talk about the philosophy of this, the philosophy of that, but it was at the local level that we were literally dealing with hospital beds and numbers.
Yeah, I guess
and people.
I guess from the outside, I don't necessarily understand what exactly rises and falls on the mayor of the municipality. So why don't you kind of talk us through some of the responsibilities and some of the things that literally could get done without you, or some of the things that could not have gotten done without you? Like, is there decisions that hit your desk that's like, hey, we got to know what you want to do here, or is this a collective thing?
Most of the hard power in our form of government locally is distributed. So you need 3 votes on the commission to make a decision. The city manager operates independent in some respects of the commission. But
how many people on the commission?
5. There's 5. But it was really the soft power that comes with the position that you're able to use for the benefit of your community. And I did use it, whether it was reaching out, contacting the governor directly, just lobbying for vaccines and PPE. But I think everybody in the city government understood the gravity of the moment. So it wasn't hard to get people to work with you. I mean, our city manager, who has a lot of the traditional powers that a mayor would have in other communities, he was totally on board with doing some of the things we needed to do to, A, put people at ease, and B, get them the what they needed, what they were looking for. And so, we were able to do vaccination events across the city, different neighborhoods, different, in different languages. I mean, it was really a broad distribution effort that everybody really, it was an all hands on deck.
So to speak to that a little bit, effort. One of my memories is actually when I was with my dad walking into one of the housing authority properties, and there was a vaccine drive, and I saw you were literally running the table. He was literally there manning the table because there was just a shortage of people to do the work. Yeah. Right. So it was, like you said, an all hands on deck thing.
And there was no playbook. It's not like there's some team that drops out of the sky, and they're like, "We're here to run your COVID response." It's like us and whoever else is willing to help,
right?
And you're kind of inventing it as you go. And so
I think it's important too that we clarify. Like we're not trying to beat a dead horse that literally it was talked about for far too long after and in too many different ways. I mean, we're just talking about something that was very unique to your term that nobody else had to deal with, right? At least the beginning stage. I think it carried over a little bit, didn't it, beyond your term, or was it kind of?
Yeah, I mean, it's still.
I mean, of course, it's still, yes, but
yeah, I was in the thick of it, and it was a historic event, and I felt like I understood or felt that gravity. I knew that this would be, because we would talk about the Spanish flu. People would say, and we would actually reference it. What did people do the last time this happened 100 years ago?
It's the closest thing we can relate to.
So we're thinking about 1913 and what they did, or 1912, whatever it was. And I think that in 100 years, people will be talking about this event.
Yeah.
But you mentioned one thing that I think we should spend some time on too, and that's a lot of people don't realize the system of government we do have here, the strong mayor. And I know that's been somewhat debated. I mean, as somebody who served as the mayor, what are your thoughts on how we run our government? And that's not just a personal thing. I mean, everybody loves Marlon. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But it's good to spend some time reflecting on the system and its strengths and weaknesses. Right?
Sounds personal.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So he's always trying to get me.
We hired Marlon, so I love Marlon.
Dude, I love Marlon too.
And he's a great city manager and a true professional. But
so, the only reason I say this is because, my point is it's not about how good of a job he's doing. We all think he's doing a great job.
Well, my feeling is...
This is a fantasy land. How would you structure the government? Who would have the power?
I am a big fan of the traditional separation of powers that we see at the federal level. And
why don't we start with, because selfishly we've had two former mayors on here and I didn't learn the structure exactly. We talked a lot about the different
strong
things.
Mayor versus the setup.
We talked a lot about affordable housing, a lot about the great things, and I've learned a ton on every episode. But one of the beauties of sitting in this seat is getting to learn from people like yourself. So talk us through what that structure really is, because this side of the table typically doesn't know what's going on over there when we're talking about politics. So
and that's fair. I mean, a lot of people don't know. I mean, and I think that it's no fault on them. I think there's a lot of people out there that would prefer to keep it, a small little group of people in the know making these decisions. But local government is so important to our everyday lives. I think I saw a statistic recently. It was like 80% of all decisions that actually affect you are at the local level.
Well, I mean, you said water, police, everything that we rely on. So
yet at the same time, we're all arguing about national politics that we know nothing about.
or have no real control.
And end up having very little effect on your everyday life.
Correct.
But so our system of government is a commission manager form of government where we have 5 elected officials, 3 of them from different districts in the city. And the city is a relatively small area of what I'll call Sarasota. When I grew up here, I didn't know where the city began and where the city ended. It's all Sarasota to me. The city is essentially a pretty small area from about the airport down to Bee Ridge Road, and out to Bobby Jones. That's the city of Sarasota. And we have 5 elected officials. 3 of them serve different districts in that city. I was an at-large elected official, so I represented the whole city.
Okay.
And then from those 5, the commission selects the mayor.
Gotcha.
And then that person runs the meetings. That person speaks for the commission, speaks for the city, represents the city.
And that's a 4-year term.
And that is, the mayor is selected every year.
Right.
So it can change. It can rotate. Some people have had it multiple years in a row. Some people have never had it, and they've been on the commission.
Who makes up the commission now, Felipe? You know, all 5.
I'm pretty sure I do.
Let's see.
Spit 'em.
Let's go. Let's
see.
go. The current mayor, Liz Alpert. We got Kyle Batty.
Okay.
We've got Eric Arroyo, and we've got Jenny Herncock, and then we have, her name is escaping me right now.
Nothing personal.
But it is a she.
No, we already got Koch. It was just the new lady.
Debbie Trice.
Debbie Trice. Sorry, I had 4 out of 5.
That was good.
Not
Good
bad.
job.
Yeah.
Way to
So-
keep up.
Forgive me, Debbie Trice.
So it's I think it's a challenging way to run a city, personally. We have sunshine laws in Florida, so none of the commissioners can talk to each other outside of a commission meeting, which is totally
Wait a second. None of the commissioners can talk to each other outside of it.
no.
We might
So,
So if we got Eric and Kyle at this table,
They would not be able to
couldn't
talk about
to
city
each
issues.
other.
They're not allowed to talk on any issue that could possibly come up before a vote. This is a statewide law that all elected officials
so they
have
can't
to.
lobby each other for votes. That's
Yeah.
what they're
Correct.
trying to prevent.
Which is
Not-
opposite.
I see the
Not outside of the
reason for it,
sunshine.
but-
They can do it during the meeting. But that's why the meetings are so dang long, right?
Well,
they can't talk about anything outside
Yeah,
the meeting.
and in reality, it's really kind of opposite of the way the world works. I mean, if you look at the state legislature, Congress, I mean, any other elected body above local bodies, they can get together and say, "What do you think of this bill? This is something you
Right.
support. Would you support this bill if I introduced it?" That happens all the time.
Right.
There are good reasons for it, but there's challenges that come with that. And there's also repercussions that come with it because you end up getting, it gives the city manager, for example, a lot of power
Yeah.
because, he works for the city commission, but when you have a city commission that can't really communicate,
He's the one communicating with
he's communicating with them.
Gotcha. So let's backpedal a little bit and focus more on the structure. You got 5 commissioners.
You lost Trey is what
Yeah,
you just said.
elect the mayor.
He's like, wait a
Probably-
second, I'm still trying to
probably
figure this
the
out.
audience too. So then the manager
Don't
works
include
for the
them.
commission.
Yeah.
Okay. So they do direct the manager on what to do, but the problem becomes there's too many voices and too many directions. So he ends up interprets it the way he chooses to.
And it's not necessarily, he doesn't, I wouldn't say he's not beholden to every decision the city makes. The city manager has their own chartered responsibilities that the city commission really can't come into. They can't pierce into that. And most of that is his administration and the way he wants to run or she wants to run their administration. The city commission can't get involved in telling the city manager this person is good and this person should get a raise or this person should go. That's all the city manager's purview. The city commission
It's
really,
basically like HR.
they're
almost.
really there to set the policy and set the direction.
The city
and then
manager.
the city manager is the one that's supposed to execute it.
Okay,
Execute.
got it. The commission, that's made up
commission,
of all
right.
5.
Right.
Got it. Hey, we're having a blast here getting to know Hagen Brody, the former mayor of Sarasota. If you want to get to know him a little bit better, hang out for the rapid fire questions.
Hey, everybody. This is former Mayor Hagen Brody here, and this is Rapid Fire on Sarasota SpeaX. I gotta say fly. I mean, who doesn't want to fly?
I can fly!
Let's see. I'm going to see the Chili Peppers in June. But, I got to go back to my roots and say Dude Ranch, Blink-182. Doritos. I want to go to India. I want to take a motorcycle trip through India. Jordan.
Jordan to the circle, puts the shot in the air. Good! The game's over, and the Bulls have won.
I think the best thing about being mayor is the opportunity to make people feel good. The most challenging aspect of being mayor is probably making tough decisions for the right reasons that some folks don't agree with. Young Jeezy, put on. Knicks on Hillview.
This is a tasty burger.
In the shuttle. Gotta say St. Armand's.
So we talked about we're talking about the structure and the Sunshine Law and the challenges that poses and the weak commission. I don't know, is that not the right way to say that?
That's
the weak
fair.
commission setup.
Weak, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Weak mayor is what they say.
Weak mayor. That's awkward.
Wait, somebody's title would be weak mayor?
I mean,
No, it's just what they call
Like the nickname for
people
the
that
title
are
is what I
people
mean.
that are kind of against having a mayor. They want to label it a strong mayor. It's kind of scare people.
We would prefer a strong mayor.
Damn it, man.
But,
Edit that out, Eric.
I'm glad that you brought up the Sunshine thing, because one thing a lot of people don't understand about Sunshine is they don't understand those difficulties that it poses our government for just getting day-to-day things done. And they also don't understand that we consistently get sued for violations. And because, all the commissioners have insurance, or whoever usually has insurance, who ends up picking up the bill for those violations? It's us. It's the taxpayer.
Because the insurance picks it up and the insurance goes up. And
So that's why Sunshine is such a hot button topic. I mean, it's
Well,
tough.
and I think it was put into place in like the 60s, and the world has changed so dramatically, with technology. And aside from just those prohibitions from communication, you have all these public record responsibilities that can get onerous. And you have people that I think use those, or execute those requests for good purpose and in good faith, and some people that don't, and they can harass you and just try to.
I can also imagine
drive you
there's
nuts.
always a loophole or a workaround for these
Well,
laws, these rules that can't really be enforced all that well.
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, how do
not
you-
saying
it's
that it
probably
ever
hard to
happens. I'm
prove as
sure
well.
that most of the people that hold that position are very honorable, but I think that there's probably a workaround somewhere.
my takeaway from it all, from an outside perspective, is it prohibits speed and efficiency, right? So whether it's business or politics, you want speed and efficiency, and this is a hindrance to that, it would seem.
Yeah, I mean, it's trying to limit corruption and backroom dealing, but at a cost.
At what cost, though?
at the cost of
At a-
speed and
at a kind of-
efficiency.
Yeah, let's get shit done.
Yeah.
So what would the alternative be then? What's the not your suggested alternative necessarily, but like what is another form of
Well, there's no
local?
real alternative to Sunshine. I mean, that is
Right, that's that. But I'm
it
just
is
saying the
But
setup.
when you're talking about the government, most cities that grow to a certain size, and I think we're there,
like a
or at
Tampa,
least
like
we'll
an
be
Orlando,
there.
like a Miami.
I mean, even smaller cities like a St. Pete.
Okay.
There's other cities across the state that have both forms of government, but the other form of government, traditional form of government, is a strong mayor or a executive mayor, and I'm in favor. I've always been supportive of having Sarasota have an elected mayor, and because I think that's important. I think the direct connection to the voters, the responsibility
Right.
to the voters, that executive, that person with a lot of the power that we have in our local government vested in, should be accountable directly to the voters.
So would that eliminate the city manager position, or is that it just works
The
differently?
way to think about it is you'd be electing your city manager.
Okay.
That's the best way to think about it.
They
You
would
still
just
have
call
a
it a mayor.
commission that becomes more of a legislative body, and then you have an elected executive like the governor or like the president. It's just
And
like
that
the federal
would
government.
come with a term of 2 years,
Whatever
4 years, 1
whatever
year,
people
whatever.
decide, it can be.
It varies across local. Okay.
4 years. 4 years is common. But I think that direct connection to the voters is important.
So,
For a
you
lot
know-
of the reasons that I said, that it's important to be beholden to the broader electorate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're the people that voted for you. They're the people that hold you accountable. You're
They're
holding.
the taxpayers
Yeah.
paying for all those
Yeah,
parties.
exactly.
Right?
So
Yeah.
it does make almost too much sense. So what is the counter argument against that? Like, why haven't we made that switch? Is that something that's ever even been talked about or
Yeah, we
pushed
had a
forward?
little effort in, I guess it was 21.
You love
or
tapping that
20.
table.
Sorry.
More importantly, what would be the process to amend that?
You have to change the charter. So the voters would have to decide to change the charter. The charter is like our Constitution. It sets out the form of government and
Gotcha.
who is responsible for what
And
branches.
it's probably
there are.
never changed since the evolution.
Well, changing the city election dates, that was amending the charter.
Okay.
Another charter amendment that we were
recently.
able to get done was making it mandatory that other charter amendments had to be in front of the general electorate.
Okay.
So that you couldn't change it back
You got to give power to the people.
without going in front of the broad group
Right,
of people that put it in
right.
place.
Also, if you live in the city, and you look at your ballot when you vote, Charter Review Board is an important position on there too. That is also lesser known usually.
Yeah, we had a charter review board that looked at that issue. Ultimately, decided not to recommend it. I thought that was a mistake, but it's a very old issue in the city of Sarasota. It comes up every so often, and I think that the nimbleness of that form of government is what ultimately will lead us into that direction. I mean, in order to be responsive, I mean, we kind of ran into a little bit of this during COVID, but in order to be responsive to needs of the city that are happening in real time and quickly, you really got to have people that have the authority to make decisions
Right.
and to address those issues. But those people should also be accountable to the voters.
Right.
In my view, if they're going to be in
I
public
like
office.
it. So how do we make that happen? Felipe's been looking for purpose in life, and I think this could be it.
That's a challenging one. I'll tell you that right now.
That's perfect because that segues into my next question anyway. So, if you look at your path, I mean, maybe you go to college and then you're the state prosecutor. You're working with the state prosecutor here, right? So that is like a trajectory for politics, right? State prosecutor, attorney. That makes sense. So did you have your mind set on running for mayor at some point in time? Did you know this early on? Is this something you fell into?
I do enjoy public service, and I wouldn't want to do it anywhere else other than my hometown. Growing up here, you just grow. It created a huge affinity for our way of life and for our culture here and this city in general. I had a great childhood. I had a great time and met just unbelievable people growing up, and I just wanted to make sure other people were able to experience that in the future. And I did have a feeling that I owed it to this community. I think a lot of whatever success I've had, in part at least, had to do with growing up here in Sarasota. So
the reason I ask is because, I don't know whether it's the fact that we've had 3 former mayors on, or Jamie Miller, or, we have Felipe here every day who's, our political advisor.
Mine too.
Someone like myself who never, even imagined politics, never even thought about it. The more conversation we have, I'm like, you know what? That sentiment that you just said right there, just public service in general.
Yeah.
Where would somebody get started? Where's there a need? Where's there an opportunity if someone's watching this and is like, you know what? I got the same feelings growing up here. Right. That's why we started this podcast.
One of the reasons I was excited to come on this show was because I know you.
Oh, you hear that? He was excited to come on the show.
Well, I know you reach a different audience than the audience that is typically listening to city government stuff.
Right.
I mean, and I think that's so important to get people up, just introduced to, and maybe even interested in running themselves. I mean, I think it's so important to have people that know this community, that grew up in this community, that have businesses in this community, that raise families in this community, stepping up and getting involved in local government. when I got involved, I was pretty naive to the scene, to the local government scene, to the politics. And there is a whole universe of city politic people that really do not go into any other universe. There's no Venn diagram. They are hyper-focused on city government and what's going on. And a lot of the candidates kind of churn out of that little small group of people. And I think that's unfortunate. You want people that have different perspectives getting involved, that have a deep connection to the community, getting involved in their hometown. I'm not bashing or saying that people that, somebody that moves here, retires here, shouldn't get involved. I think they should. But I think other people, everybody else should as well. Yeah. And we just don't see that, And I kind of understand why. It's challenging and it's, it's nasty. You're going to get your name.
At least it's financially rewarding.
Right. You make next to nothing. And it's very time consuming. Right. And, I happen to be in a good place to be able to do that. And I understand not everybody is. I don't even think I am in that position anymore. I just had a kid and, that stuff catches up with you. But it's just so important to get other people involved.
A diversity of voices is always something that's important at the local level, because I'll tell you, as somebody who's worked at local politics and federal politics, the problem you tend to get locally is you get kind of an echo chamber, especially when it becomes issue-based. We see it a lot here in Sarasota. We had CEO Romanecki from Selby Gardens, and a lot of that opposition to that lifestyle energy access facility was because everybody just thought it was a parking deck.
Right.
And their attitude was, it's a leaf. But their attitude was, listen, we don't want a parking deck in our neighborhood.
Well, I mean,
that message turned in the echo chamber, and we got people opposed to it without even knowing what it was.
Yeah,
it's a leaf.
And that was, for me,
everybody knows what a leaf is. That's
a kind of a good example, because I always prided myself on trying to represent the broader community that didn't have time to show up to city commission meetings. Those handful of regulars, call them, hobby lobbyists that come up, show up to every city commission meeting, and they speak on every issue, and it's like they're the sixth commissioner. They are a lot of times are not thinking about those that can't be there, that need their voice heard, that need to be represented, and most likely wouldn't feel the same way about a certain issue. So
they just got other shit to do in the day.
Yeah, they go to work, they have kids. They can't come.
It sounds like we're talking about my community right now.
One of the things that I really was proud of, that I was able to do for a short period before I got moved back after I was done, was moving the meeting times to the evening. It was a big inconvenience for staff. It was an inconvenience for us. But I thought it was so important to be able to offer working people an opportunity to interact with their local government.
Outside of business hours.
Imagine that, a government supporting working people. Who would have thought?
Right. So they moved it back. And I thought, I would be willing to sacrifice. I felt staff should be willing to sacrifice in order to have that broader engagement.
Yeah.
But those were, if you look at my decisions or even controversial decisions, you can very easily trace my line of thinking in that back to those people, back to the people that aren't showing up to city commission meetings, have more important things to do, and trust me to make those decisions on their behalf.
Yeah. I agree completely. Let's switch gears. What are you doing now? You're in the private sector. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm a practicing attorney.
All right, now let's switch gears again then.
Yeah, practicing attorney. Work at a firm called Rolfs Henry. It's a full-service firm. I do mostly commercial litigation right now, but we do all kinds of stuff. And
commercial litigation. You want to explain that for the audience that might not know?
Represent companies in business contractual disputes, essentially. Okay. I still do. I do a little bit of everything. I mean, we have attorneys in our office that specialize in all kinds of stuff, and I enjoy kind of expanding my horizon. So I get involved in a wide variety of cases.
Still making time for public service?
I've been out of office.
No, you just had a kid too. So
I've been busy. I've been busy on my personal life. And it's been a enjoyed
break
and just nice break. Yeah.
How old's the kid?
4 months.
4 months.
Little baby boy.
They say children are one of life's blessings. Can you expound on that, please?
Trey can't wait for that one.
Yeah. No, I got a great little baby boy. He's awesome. He's starting to sleep at least partially through the night at this point. So it's all good.
I had a great experience in the mother baby unit after we had our first. My pediatrician came in and he said, "Now, I know this whole sleeping thing. Let me just say, Mom, let Dad sleep at night, right? Dad, let Mom handle it. And in the daytime, make sure you cook and you clean and you do all of the things you can to do." And I'm looking over at my wife. I'm like, "Sounds good to me. What do you think?"
What's his doctor's name?
We did. We actually did that for the most part. I mean, I don't wake up for anything, but it went well. You know? So you got maybe 2 more months, and he's
awesome.
sleeping through the night. You'll be good to go.
Yeah, it's really special. So
what's his name?
Alexander.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Get him into politics.
He'll do whatever he wants to get into.
So I got to know though, like what's on the horizon? Because you're not done with politics. You're not done with like what if you could just draw it up right now, what would you be doing next?
Yeah, I did that word. Have you
ever asked a politician that before?
I try to think.
That's why you ask.
No immediate plans.
If you think of it as public service, which is how I always thought about it, then it's much easier to stomach and talk about.
Not politics.
Yeah, I don't want to go into politics. I never wanted to go into politics, but I wanted to go into public service, and I enjoyed public service, and I would do it all over again. I mean, it was really something special, and something, if I never got back involved in government, it's something I would just cherish for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I don't have any immediate plans. I don't have any, I'm really just focused on my personal life right now. And
Trey nailed it.
yeah, my
you got a 4-month-old, dude. I don't blame you.
Listen,
so day by day right now.
I'm barely planning
Day
to
by
Saturday.
day, yeah.
I'm not planning.
So, but what you're kind of saying too, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, is if you're looking at it through the vein of the idea that it's public service, right? You'll serve if and when called upon, if it makes sense for you to do so, right?
Yeah.
So it just really depends on what's out there and what's a good fit.
Yeah, and the need, and you got to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
I people ask me how to get involved, and I usually tell people just get involved in something you're interested in. Find a nonprofit, find an advocacy that is in line with your values and what you care about for the city, or something that you feel needs to change, and you'll learn a ton. And you just get involved, see where it goes. And the other piece
That's
of
a
advice,
nice way of saying you're naive. So when you get into it, you'll
have
learn.
to be a little naive,
Right.
because if you know everything, you'd never
won't
get into
go-
it.
right.
You got to be a little naive.
believe
You
it.
got to cover your eyes and kind of just walk off that cliff.
I believe it.
And that is the other part of advice that I give is just, once you decide you want to get involved and you really take an honest look at whether you're prepared for that or not, do it. Do it. A lot of people will tell you to wait, and a lot of people will tell you to get involved in something else before you do that, or do this before you do that. And everybody's got their own little concoction of what you have to do to be successful. Yeah, but it really comes down to how you feel about the community and whether the community agrees with you or not.
Love it. Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have a former mayor on and talk about Sarasota on the Sarasota SpeaX podcast. So if you're okay with it, I'd like to talk a little bit more about Sarasota, some of your favorite spots, some of your, all of that good stuff. But I want to pass it over to Trey first for the famous question.
Yeah, so Tominator Law wants to know, what are your thoughts on roundabouts? Do you love them or do you hate them?
Who wants to know?
Tominator Law.
Who's that?
That's our roundabout sponsor.
There you go.
Oh, is it? There's roundabout sponsors?
It's a roundabout
If you haven't
sponsor.
noticed, we ask everybody about roundabouts. Which, I mean, depending on how you interpret that question, it could be about.
He was
just
excited to
roundabouts
come on the
or
show. He didn't
lots
say
of
he
things.
watches the show. He just knows that we reach a different audience.
He watches.
So.
Trust me, he watches. Everyone watches.
Everyone watches. That's facts.
Roundabouts I think work in some intersections better than others. I think signals work in other
No.
intersections.
Do you love them? Do you hate them?
I'll tell you, the one that I think has improved the situation a lot is the one on Mound on heading out to the Ringling Bridge on US 40.
Really? You're the first and only person that says that. Everybody else says they're all okay except for that
Except for,
That's the one everybody hates usually.
I have driven, I drive through that one all the time. You drive through it to go to the beach. I have not had a problem.
Have you ever gotten stuck on it?
I used to get stuck when it was in a signaled intersection all the time.
Right.
And
But
it
not
would be
since you're
backed
moving.
up all the way to St. Armand's on a daily basis.
No, I don't mean stuck like traffic jam. I mean stuck like you had to do an extra circle because you missed your turn because you were on the inside lane
no.
and not the outside lane.
Well, here,
I think other people have probably had to
For
do that
sure.
because of me.
we were coming off of Morgan and I
round
were
them.
coming off of St. Armand's, and an elderly lady took a left. Went opposite direction. She just was playing chicken with oncoming
No,
traffic.
there's no rules in that.
I certainly would like
vortex.
to see the comment section after we get some eyeballs on that section because I think you might be the only person, and this is why it's such a dumb question that it's good, right? Because
Roundabouts.
everybody has a different opinion on it. And that is so unique because everybody says, they're not so bad. This one out here is the worst one. That one is horrible. I get stuck on it, or I see
People have short
accidents.
memories. It was terrible when it was a signaled intersection.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
That
No
one
matter
is-
which way
it
you were
was-
going.
That one is
It was.
tough, though. I have trouble with that one.
Well, I don't think they have all the signage up yet. They're still like adding signage to make it like a
One
little
of
more clear.
the things about roundabouts that I think is important is you have to have an obstruction in the middle of the roundabout.
So somebody doesn't go straight through it.
No, it's so people don't look. This is an
okay.
actual planning thing. You have statues, you have art, you have all this stuff in the middle of the
don't see
roundabout
the other-
on purpose, so people aren't seeing other people getting into the roundabout and trying to like
'Cause you're not-
predict
you should
and
just
get
keep
it
doing
right.
Don't
your thing.
overthink it.
You don't want to overthink
You know,
it.
All right.
was that part of the focus groups that you guys did on that? Because I've never heard anybody say that. I always thought the art in the middle was a horrible idea because it obstructed the view. But what you're saying, it makes them look at where they're supposed to look.
Yeah, you're supposed to look
as
kind of where
opposed
you're
to
going.
trying to anticipate other traffic.
Right.
How about that?
So you don't
We
want to
learn
look at the
more
other
about
traffic.
roundabouts every episode.
You also
Every
don't
time.
want to look at the statue either because that's not going to help you because you can't see the car coming in or you can't see where you're going.
Yeah, but it helps you focus and not
I-
get distracted.
I
I
get
get
it,
it.
The other reason they're good is for when power goes out, they still work.
Yeah.
And when you're in a Bear Island barrier situation,
Yeah, and we have hurricanes. And
I got a
shit
question
like
for you, Brad. When you
A question for me? I'm
do
not the guest.
When you approach roundabouts now, do you think about the podcast?
that. Every time.
Me too. and
Every
I get
time.
embarrassed when I poorly perform. I'm like, when I pull up, I'm like, I'm an expert on these things now.
We're gonna
Watch me
get-
go.
we're gonna get
And
your,
any slight of brake check-in or anything
No,
like
there's
that.
no
I
rules
feel
in there.
quite embarrassed.
You know
no
what I
rules.
just thought about? We're getting your car wrapped, not your non-work vehicle. We're gonna get that wrapped with Sarasota SpeaX. Because it's not embarrassing to approach that roundabout and screw it up if you're not a host of the Sarasota SpeaX podcast. But if you're on here and you're talking about roundabouts and learning about statues being in the middle of it and all of these things, you got to be good. So we need to get that thing wrapped. What do you say?
Well,
You're a big wrap guy. Then we could put it on Wrap Off Wednesday and win.
I'll think about it.
All right, fair. So what are some of your favorite spots around Sarasota? Where do you see, like the most improvement? How about this downtown going this way or that way now, like over towards the bowling alley? Like you think it's going to continue to grow that way? Give us some inside baseball type stuff.
I think Sarasota is going to continue to change, and I think it's going to continue to redevelop. It's just so different from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so different. And I think a lot of the change has been good. I think some of the change has been a little challenging or off-putting. It's just because
Like
the
what?
city's grown so fast.
Like noise ordinances and high rises, or like 'cause these are the
Traffic.
I
common
think it's
issues.
just the number of people, and it's
Yeah.
not just when we talk about that Sarasota, that's the broader Sarasota.
Right.
Little city of Sarasota has not really grown in population that much.
There's nowhere to live.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but the broader Sarasota, there's more people to frequent the city and
They do. They
the
come to the
nightlife
city.
and the restaurants and all that stuff. So they flock in, even though they're not city residents.
We've been in population-wise in like the 50,000 people population for decades, and it hasn't changed. That number hasn't skyrocketed like people think.
Right.
But the broader community, the county, Lakewood Ranch, these
growing
other areas have
major,
grown
right.
tremendously, and they do. They come to the city.
drive the economics of it.
They come to
Yeah.
the Pineapple Drop.
Well, it's
All
the
right.
downtown of
I got an
of
idea.
this whole area.
I got an idea.
Yeah.
You served 5.5 years, right? So is that you saw at least 4, maybe 5 New Year's Eves? Okay. So I'm gonna say a number, You guess over or under on the number of total arrests made on New Year's Eve downtown Sarasota.
This year?
This year. This just like 12 days. This is relevant, right? Because it's like the 15th, 16th.
I wasn't there, but...
No, you didn't have
so
to be there,
okay.
but this is just how...
Let's see how well... For the question, I have to get a vibe.
I gotta
feel the room. I want to see the crowd.
Okay, so we'll...
A lot of people from Bradenton. What do we got?
Spoken like a true Sarasota mayor.
Number of arrests, New Year's Eve, higher or lower, 35.
Higher or lower than 35 arrests?
35.
Just in the downtown?
Just city of Sarasota. We're talking police. We had Chief Trochet on, so I've got some insider
I'd probably say
information.
it's probably a pretty good number, but I'd probably say lower.
Ooh, he's good.
Yeah, but you're not a Vegas odds maker, Brad. I
Yeah,
mean,
that was too easy. What was the number? Like 0?
It was like 20. It was like 20.
It was 2.
No, it wasn't 2.
It was 3.
It was like 2.
It was really low, Brad.
pretty sure it was
Oh,
3.
shit.
Yeah.
So I screwed up.
Yeah, you should've
For
given
whatever
him-
reason, I thought he said 20.
No,
I
he
thought it was 20.
He said 3.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was really
frick.
low.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
3, though. That's pretty good.
But give us more on the, development.
I scred that one up. That
affordable
would have been so
housing.
good if I said, like,
You know what I mean? Because that's the stuff that I think people want to know that they don't hear about.
Yeah.
You know?
Development is
Like,
obviously...
are we going to get more infill development in the city? And like, what do you think are from your perch where you were? Like, what is your analysis of why we can't do more of that? Is it just affordability for the private sector, or?
Of the affordable housing is such a complicated issue, and people don't really give it that much credit for how tough and challenging that issue is. There's so many very real forces that you have no control over that manipulate that issue, that influence that issue. Things that are totally out of our control. Just being in a incredibly desirable place to live is very challenging to work against as far as home prices and affordable housing. But another challenging aspect of that is that the reality is most people want their values to go up. Most people that own a home, they want to build equity in that home. So they're not complaining that the home values are going up, but it does create this affordable housing issue. And I think it is an issue. I felt and still feel that Sarasota really is still trying to figure out exactly what it wants to be and what it's going to be. And, I think we made a lot of positive changes in this regard. Sarasota, in my mind, was on a one-way track to becoming a luxury, leisure city for the ultra-wealthy vacationers. I mean, that's just kind of the direction we were heading in, and a lot of that had to do with our zoning code and the types of accommodations that were being built and the types of homes and condos that were being built, mostly large luxury condominiums.
Second home type places, or
retirement, wealthy
homes,
retirement, winter residences.
Right.
And a lot of that was dictated by our zoning code. Our zoning code had very low density caps for our condominiums downtown. It really, when you look at the financial incentive, if you're a developer, it really steered you only into that direction.
Right.
And so we tried to broaden that, and the commission is still trying to broaden that to allow, the trick is to try to get the developers, people that build, get them to build what we need.
Right.
How do you do that?
Right.
It's financial incentive. It's ugly. It's that's a ugly truth. But unless it's financially incentivized or advantageous for someone to build what you need them to build, what we want them to build as a community, they're not going to build it.
They're in business for profit.
Right, and that is all done through our zoning code. And so one of the, I think, most impactful and important things that I was a part of was making some changes, or at least initiating some of these real significant changes in our zoning code that incentivize financially developers to build smaller units, more inherently affordable units, and even some below market units in our downtown.
Yeah.
And I think that'll be really important, not just for the people that will now or then be are able to afford to live here, but also for the downtown itself. The downtown, it will thrive with more full-time residents. It will thrive with younger people, younger families, college graduates, being able to actually live here.
Agreed.
And I think that some of the other issues, traffic is another big issue around, but I think that's
we got roundabouts, so we're good.
Well, you just want people to be able to live close to where they want to be, not having to get on the road and drive 45 minutes just to get to where they work or where they want to go out or where they want to get food. That was really important to me. Yeah. Having grown up here and having grown up in a Sarasota that I felt afforded working class people, middle class people, the opportunity to be a part of this community, I did feel like that was starting to slip away and shift. And so a lot of those changes were geared towards making sure that that it would be a more diverse community in our future.
Love it. Well, we certainly don't have to keep it to politics, but we like to wrap up every show with a few shout outs of people that maybe we should get on the podcast. I'll let Felipe share the Felipeism as to what you're looking for, what we're looking for as far as those names.
Tee him up. All right, I'll tee you up. So, the people we want to have on this podcast are people who are doing big things or making a difference, in whatever sector they're doing, who have a great story to tell. But if you don't know them, you don't know them.
Boom!
And that's the problem I think we have in Sarasota a lot of the time. People think, like you said, this is just an affluent retirement community, and it's a lot more than that, but all you see is these high-end condos downtown. So,
and there's a lot of interesting people that live there too.
That's true too. That's true too.
I'm not going to put anybody on the spot.
You should. That's exactly what we're asking. Put someone on the spot. We need more guests. So we want to get those guests who maybe we don't know personally.
They want to be on the podcast anyways. So there's people that watch this.
We want to bless them.
Every episode we release, there's people that are watching that are like, oh, I hope he picks me, right? So maybe they'll thank you for it. Right?
Yeah. There's such a wealth of life experience in this community, and some of the folks that I've met along the way that have retired here, have moved here from other lives that they've had in other places and incredible successes that they've had. There's some really interesting people out there, and a lot of them.
We're asking you to name them.
What are their names?
I'm not going to go there, but
you're really not going to name
them. You'll know when you come across them. But a lot of the most.
Oh, you're the guy. Yeah.
A lot of the most interesting people that you meet, they're not out there. They're not. Trying to get involved.
Are you the guy?
Let me rephrase Felipe.
I'm going to name some people that he knows, so I think fit this criteria.
Let me rephrase Felipe's question. So these are people. This could be someone that you're friends with that won't mind you saying, "Hey, this person
you should have this guy on. He's really cool and interesting."
It could be a young, up and coming entrepreneur. It could be a grandma that runs a great nanny service that you're looking to use, when your 4-month-old turns 12 months. We don't care who. It doesn't have to be somebody that retired from a $1 billion enterprise and now and wants to live a secret life. Somebody that honestly could maybe use the spotlight or would love to come on. So think that.
Let me think about it.
I've got one for you.
Let me think about it.
I'm going to get one for Hagen. Yeah. And I'm going to do this because I know you don't mind, but Elizabeth Moore is somebody who I think would be great on this platform. I don't know her personally, but I know Hagen knows her. And the reason Hagen knows her is because she helped him spearhead a certain tennis tournament and the refurbishment of the Payne Park courts. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Elizabeth Moore, she's an incredible philanthropist in town.
You said the name.
And she's very involved. She's involved heavily with a number of different nonprofits in the community, but one of her passions, thankfully, is tennis, and it's one of mine too. And we were able to attract a small professional tournament to Payne Park, and with a little luck and some support, I think that could really grow to be something special for our community. And sports tourism is a big part of a community, particularly in Florida where it's warm and you get a lot of sports enthusiasts, and we got a lot of tennis fans, a lot of tennis players, and so I think it's a great thing. I wanted to bring something to Payne Park that I thought would help.
What dates are the tournament held?
It's in April.
April.
It changes a little bit.
Write that down,
year,
Morgan.
April. No, this will
Yeah.
be airing just before then. So that's
Excellent.
perfect.
Yeah, it's an awesome tournament. It's world class tennis. You're seeing some of the best players in the world. If you go to that tournament, you'll see people on TV the next month at the French Open or Wimbledon.
awesome.
I mean, it's pretty incredible.
So it's a warm up tournament for some of those bigger ones in a way.
It's kind of like a minor league.
I used to go to those in New York.
Yeah.
We had one out in Long Island.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
When we
So-
cut for the podcast, why don't you stick and do a quick promo? We'll
For the
blast it.
Sarasota Open? Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Great
Awesome.
idea.
Well, hey man, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks
you were
for having
almost
me.
you were almost the first guest to not make a recommendation. Felipe saved you, so you owe him one for that one.
No, but
'cause you gave the
I
name.
understand. I
But
understand.
no, we get it.
Open
We get it.
mic,
I
understand
It's
why.
all good.
There's so many great people out there in this community. And it is
And you're one of them, so thanks for coming
Yeah,
on.
well, I don't know about that, but it is a great community and it's a great town, and I think we're all just blessed to be a part of it and be able to share in this experience.
Rock and roll, man.
Amen.
Thanks so much for coming
Thanks for
on. We
being here,
appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was good.